Welcome back to the program. We'll talk about that backlog clearance by the federal government and the dispute over whether or not it has been done. We're being joined by Mr. Bankole Bernard. He's chairman of many things, Association of Airline Training Organization of Nigeria, chairman Airline and Passenger Joint Committee, and chairman Finglo Holdings. He joins us via Zoom. Mr. Bernard, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Let's begin with clearing the gray areas, which is we got the news about the central bank saying, look, the obligations that we owe in terms of backlogs have been cleared. But later on, we saw these headlines where some airlines are saying, show us receipts as to this. Some said that the last time I checked, it remains as status quo. Is there an update to that effect?
Well, I think there is misconception and miscommunication in regard to FX issues concerning the airlines. The first thing is, when you follow the CBN policies that allow the foreign airlines to source for their FX from the central bank by doing forward bidding and all that, that is the backlog that has been cleared. So as it stands today, all verifiable FX demand from CBN has been cleared. So the CBN is not in any way indebted to any foreign airlines in terms of their Naira funds, which they've used to bid for FX. So that's one angle. Then the second angle is the Naira that the foreign airlines have with the commercial banks. And you remember when the regime of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came in, the Naira was floated and everyone was asked to go and source for their FX through the I&E window. So their inability to use the Naira they have to source for the FX through the I&E window as a result of rate differentials, I don't think it's the responsibility of CBN. And I don't think there's anything anybody can do about it. Business is all about profit and loss. There are times that you make profit and there are times that you make loss. So I think as an airline, they are left with the option to then cut their losses and move on and start to trade. I think that's the rightful thing to do, rather than this back and forth of what CBN has done or what CBN has not done. CBN has done the needful. Let us start to speak the right narrative about our country. CBN has cleared the backlog of the airlines.
So why do they hold that view about the trap funds, and why is it making that much of a headline?
Well, it's a news sensation because they know that the journalists will loud the information for them. They have to give reasons why they're doing certain action of theirs. Now, that backlog, which they've been unable to repatriate, not as a result of CBN inability to provide them with the funds, but as a result of the devaluation of our Naira, as it were, that made the exchange rate at which they sold and at the rate at which they are about to remit to be different is the loss they are not willing to take. So they have to take a decision, and take a decision very fast. Based on that, we've seen restriction of airfare to more expensive fares on the GDS. And with the more expensive fares on the GDS, Nigerians have been put through the pay to be able to recoup some of the losses that they would have made from the previous sales they've made. So in the real sense of it, I think we all have to come to the round table and say, hey, look, yes, the Naira has been devalued. We don't have money with CBN. We've got our money with commercial banks. Let us cut our losses and move on. That's what business is all about. But us maintaining status quo that, oh, the government must sell at a particular rate to us, I don't think it's an ideal position.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, the CBN governor had said that all the backlog had been cleared, and anything else that the foreign airlines were still claiming cannot be verified, especially after the audit. So perhaps the foreign airlines may need to present alternative or superior evidence to prove indeed that $700 million is being owed. But away from that part of the conversation now, to the increasing cost of local ticket fares. We've seen the landing safely of a local airline in London, which was celebrated amid great excitement. And that's another part of the conversation because, you know, that defied all of the administrative bottlenecks of local airlines plying the Western space. We'll get to that part of the conversation. But one thing that is also being celebrated there is the reduced cost, you know, of that fare to London. Why are we not seeing the same reduction in ticket fares for local travel?
Well, you will agree with me that it's actually very expensive doing business in Nigeria. It's actually very, very expensive. The cost of doing business in Nigeria compared to the rest of the world, it's alarming. And that's one of the things that's probably going to discourage foreign investors from coming to this kind of business climate, because they could possibly do this business somewhere else and make their money, and their money will be saved. So we have to come to a reasonable point to say, can we look at the policies that drives the aviation industry? Can we look at a way of ensuring that certain things are made available? The taxes on airline, on aircraft parts, can we look at it? Can we look at the costs of operations, the charges coming from the government? By the time we look at all those things, trust me, the airfare that you probably get in Nigeria will be as competitive as what you're getting anywhere around the world. The cost of operating an airline in Nigeria is astronomical. And that is what is making the airlines increase their airfare. And it looks like the service does not commensurate with their counterparts around the world. Take, for instance, there's a charge on every ticket. It's called passenger service charge. It's being charged on international airlines and local airlines. Local fare, international fare, pay what we call passenger service charge. On this passenger service charge, it's about $10 for local fare, for local fares. About $50 on international fares. Now, the question is this: when government takes this charges, what is being done with it? Certain services should have been provided for not just the passengers, but for the airlines as well. But they're getting little or nothing from the government. So if airfares are high, it's not as a result of the local carriers wanting to just hike the fare, it's as a result of excess levies and taxes on operating within our local space. Mm. It costs about 45% of the total airfare that is being used for charges, for taxes, levies, and aviation fuel. Right. So when you look at it, what are the airlines left with? They're left with little or nothing. Otherwise, you will have seen quite a number of people coming up with different airlines with the population that we have in Nigeria. But it's a bit difficult. So first thing first, the government even needs to look into the policy that regulates the aviation industry.
Well, Mr. Bernard,
how can we... Yeah.
Pardon me, I need to align my question with a point you just raised. That's why I butt in. And you've said time and again that it's tough doing business in Nigeria. You've talked about how much these airlines have to incur and what little will be left at the end of the day. And it just takes me back to the first question which we asked about the clearing or not of the FX backlog. You're a business person as well, and perhaps for a minute, put yourself in the shoes of some of these airlines that are contesting and saying, well, we sold the tickets at this price when the FX was this, and now you're saying that we should get our FX at a lower rate. So obviously they're making a loss in an already difficult business climate. And I think that is the angle they're coming from, that is it fair? They did business, provided service at a premium, but we're being asked to take our FX at a lower rate. Do you at least have a feel of their own perspective?
Let us be fair, and fair is fair. We must not subject ourselves to exploitation. It's very necessary that we make things clear here. Now, as a result of their inability to remit their backlog, which is with the commercial banks, we need to be clear. Now we're making reference to the foreign airlines. We're making reference to the foreign airlines. Their inability to remit their backlog, which is with the commercial banks, at rates that they consider not suitable, is what has made them to close what we call lower inventory. They restricted their inventory. The airlines make their money through two ways. It's either they thrive on volume or they thrive on yield. When volume is not there, then you subject your business to what we call yield. And when you subject it to yield, it means that you will sell fewer seats at a very expensive rates. And that's why you found out that the price of international tickets, economic class, has gone as high as 3.5, 3.7. Who has been able to sit down to work out the airfare, how they arrived at that 3.5? Nobody's talking about that. So at that 3.5, not only as an airline you're making profit, but you are making more than enough as a result of the losses you have incurred, because they are not even sure if future FX is going to be possible. And that made them to recoup some of their losses. So the question now is this: if you've been able to do that, then there's no need making noise that you still have backlog. If you have any airlines coming out to say they have backlog, then let them come to the air, just like I have done this morning, to say we have so backlog, and with this backlog it's been impossible. Or maybe we'll set up an audit committee to look into how they came about this backlog. I think it will make things a lot easier for the entire public, as well as the aviation experts. But we sitting back saying that, oh, we don't want to, we have the backlog. If we don't cut our losses, we're going to be making a lot of losses. How come all of a sudden the prices of airfare has gone down? Have you asked yourself what could be responsible for that? Number one, there's a new entry into a major route, which means that all the people, one of the things you must understand is this. There are two major destinations that Nigerian used to fly to. Number one was Dubai. Dubai has been out of the place for a while now, so we've resorted to our London route. So the UK route is where a lot of them used to mark their airfare. Now, Air Peace has come into that space with a direct flight that will not cause any layover in any other country. The price has dropped. Why? What happened? Is there magic around that? I mean, we should be able to question that. What made the prices to drop? And I think the chairman of Air Peace has come out to say to you that, look, all of a sudden the prices have dropped. The prices will drop as long as we have another source of supply that is different from the conventional one. The supply that we have that is air-based, that is a direct flight, a daily flight, would definitely put pressure on every other routes. So all the airlines, they're forced to quickly make an adjustment, or they'll be out of the market in no time.
So, Mr. Bernard, let's come back to the local market, which comparatively, from where it was to where it is now, the airlines, air tickets are pretty expensive. And if some of these guys are worried over this environment, what exactly is the proposition to the government to help? Because technically, the roads are not as safe as they used to be before. And if we have more people flying, it will guarantee the sustainability of that space. Besides all the argument as to this, that, or the other about getting access to foreign exchange and all of this to buy and maintain things. So my question directly is, what can be done further to help even the local flights within Nigeria to even be more affordable, given the state of our nation, and helping these industry players to stay in business?
It is very simple. The word subsidy is not my local dialect language. Subsidy is not a word that is generated in Nigeria. It means it's an international word. And as an international word, it means that subsidy is being practiced everywhere around the world. If subsidy is being practiced everywhere around the world, Nigeria is an oil-producing country. So what we should be asking ourselves is this: how can we make aviation fuel available to our local airlines so that it reduces the pressure on the price of local tickets that will enhance business within our country? I think that is a fantastic way to start or to look at it. How can we make Jet A1 available to our local airlines at a cheaper rate so that the airfare for local travel becomes a lot easier? You will see more airlines come into that market space. And that's the truth. We saw during festive period that the government made it possible for air transport to be cheaper so that people could go celebrate Christmas break. Why can't we look into the aviation industry? Aviation has always been seen, or rather, air transport has always been seen as a luxury. And today, I can say to you, air transport is no longer a luxury, but a necessity, as it were, because our roads are not good. The fear of being kidnapped has made a lot of people resort into air transport. Why will I want to subject myself by wasting a lot of time on the road, being scared of being kidnapped, to flying by air? So if the government can come to the aid of the industry by ensuring that aviation fuel prices are reasonable enough to make that sector attractive, you will see airfare drop drastically. And it will help the common, the public, the traveling public, to use air transport as an alternative means of transport.
But Mr. Bernard, while that is, that point is acknowledged about interventions from the government, some would argue that, airlines must not be 100% dependent on subsidies all of the time, that they must be viable.
Certainly.
But that's one part of it. But what about the concern also about the cost of doing business in dollars? Some airlines would say the aircraft is purchased in dollars, maintenance is purchased in dollars, ground services is also done in dollars. Do you worry about the concern of this dollarization of the economy that some economic experts frown at? Can there be an alternative way of doing things in addition to bringing down the cost of Jet A1 fuel for airline operators?
Well, unfortunately, air transport and aviation, it is not a local thing that is subject to a country, a particular country. And that's why we have an international body like AATON regulating and seeing into air safety and security of a lot of countries.
What about...
And that's why a country like Nigeria is a member.
Mr.
Now,
Bernard.
The dollarization of the industry is inevitable. Everything about the industry is done in dollars. Let's be sincere with that.
Pardon me if I may come in there. Mr. Bernard, what about the part of the business that is done in Nigeria? Should it also be dollarized?
The part of the business that is done in Nigeria is very minimal. And you and I know that almost 80 to 90% of our consumptions are imported. You know that. And the reason we cannot, the fabric that I'm wearing, is it produced in Nigeria? Of course not. But this is a local attire. But guess what? The only way is we are import dependent, because to produce locally is even more expensive. Not to now talk of an industry that is dollar based. So it's not a matter of we cannot dollarize our economy. We are talking about aviation here. The aircraft are not being manufactured in Nigeria.
Right.
Even the leasing companies, they are outside Nigeria. Right? The spare parts are imported.
Right.
Not locally made. Even some of those trainings and the MROs, they are all done outside the country. So it means that there's going to be a pressure, no matter what the local airlines are doing, they are subjected to changing this money to dollar to be able to meet their contingent liability. By ensuring that for their operations to continue, right, they must be able to have access to dollars. So it's inevitable. Well, how can the government help? The government needs to look into the policies that governs this particular industry. And there's absolutely nothing wrong in setting up MROs. If you have MROs, it means some of the checks that is being done outside the country on the aircraft will be done locally. It means the pressure of FX will become reduced. Now, right, Mr. Bernard, importation of aircraft,
I know this is your forte.
The aircraft parts can be imported into the country with reduced duty, right, or without duty at all, to make things easier for the end users who are the passengers. All right. So that's why I keep laying emphasis on the policy.
Well, Mr. Bernard,
policy is very important.
Let me just come in here.
Right,
I know we could have this conversation all day. I mean, this is your area of forte, and this is a sector that you have studied and actively participated in for years. For a lot of people who are wondering what is MRO, I think it means maintenance, repairs, and operations. So
exactly.
So we don't get them lost here. But on a final note,
you are keeping up with it.
That's why it's good to speak with people like you. But you know, when you talk about government support, it's important to also talk about it not just in terms of funding. There's also the enabling environment, and you know, we've heard some of these airlines talk about how tough it is working with you know, the civil servants, sometimes with regulators, and it looks like they're obviously standing in your way. And you're thinking, well, yes, it is business, but it's a business that is meant to improve the economy. So how about we work together rather than working at loggerheads? I know you must have heard that narrative. So if you were to speak to government as well in that area, well, the Minister of Aviation has been quite upbeat. I mean, people have seen him even doing videos about aircraft and showing what is possible with aircraft. So you can see the enthusiasm and all of that. But let's trickle it down to the working environment when it comes to interfacing with civil servants and the rest. What needs to be done better, Mr. Bernard, on the final note?
The civil servants in the aviation sector are not different from the civil servants in every industry within Nigeria. So it means that they will always be there, and there's nothing you and I can do about it. But the question is, how do we work around it? Number one, to work in certain areas in the aviation industry requires certain licenses. Like for me, I have an aviation school where we train cabin crew, ab initio, as well as flight dispatch. And when we're done with this training, right, NCA, which is the regulatory body, takes up the pain of conducting proper exams for the students before they can go into the industry. It means that the industry is well regulated for safety. So the so-called students, some of them ends up working with the regulators as well. So the question now is this: why can't we maintain that same level of standard with the civil servants in the aviation industry? I think the minister, coming from another industry, needs to first of all continue what the presidential did in terms of engaging the stakeholders.
All right.
There should be a stakeholders forum to help him understand the major challenges within the industry that will lead into formulating the right policy that will help the industry move to the next level. Right, we cannot continue to pay lip service and expect that things will change. Civil servants will continue to be civil servants, but we must make a conscious effort to say we want to change the narrative in an industry that is well regulated. I hope you know that aside banking industry, airline aviation industry is one of the most regulated, and it's because of the safety and security standard they have to keep to. Otherwise, the international examiner, which is ICAO, is going to visit and look at what we've done right and you will hear about the past month. You heard what happened a few months ago when ICAO came and they said the result was not so palatable. Now we're working hard to make sure that we increase the level of security, the level of safety within our aviation space.
Mr. Bernard, the whole idea, after all, is to ensure that these players and operators have a good business or working environment, ease of doing business for them. And for those of us who are passengers and who fly, to make sure it's as affordable as possible. And we hope that the maintenance, repair, and overhaul infrastructure, I think in Akwa Ibom, will come upstream so that some of the things that my colleagues have been asking about will be done and dusted so we can reduce costs as much as possible. But most thank you so much, Mr. Bankole Bernard, the Chairman, Association of Airline Training Organizations of Nigeria, the Chairman, Airline and Passengers Joint Committee, as well as the Chairman, Figlo Holdings. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, that's it with the conversation about backlogs with airlines and that environment. We'll switch gears now to something quite exciting. Not that the others were not exciting, but let's make it a bit mellow and fun as much as possible. We're talking fashion, and the person who has found expression in that space joins us in just a moment. Join us again.